Vaudeville was in its golden era, still a main attraction, even where films were played. A lot of the small-time, four-a-day acts were routine but good. On the big time, you saw the great stars, like Harry Houdini, never equaled in his line. The Vaudeville circuit was the best training a lot of famous actors and actresses ever had. When they reached the top in Vaudeville, they were in. One act, Gallagher and Sheen, was so popular that crowds mobbed them after every show. There was also the question of how to spend your spare time outdoors. The seashore was not a bad place to go, if you didn't mind getting slapped in the face by the ocean. Even if you did, there were compensations. Thoughtful beaches provided jazz music by bathing beauties. And there was always Atlantic City where the fleecy parade. After the cup, the girls looked good. We were just getting used to the new one-piece suits. This was the heyday of the dance hall, and when some smart operator linked jazz and marathon dancing, he had something good for the box office, although it was a bit rough on the contestants. The long-haired musicians, even when they had crew haircuts like Rachmaninoff's, were sure to be popular. Paderewski not only looked like the pianist ought to look, but he was one of the few to be successful in politics, too. All the best in music came to America. Scotty Gazaza, and Enrico Caruso, the tenor.
Things weren't so harmonious on the political scene. President Wilson had brought back to Washington a peace treaty with a plan for a League of Nations, both of which met opposition at home. Wilson campaigned stubbornly for his ideas, but he became ill, and the opposition, which was centered in the powerful Senate Foreign Relations Committee, managed to defeat him. The leader of the opposition was Senator Henry Cabot Lodge, Sr. Another great political event had taken place. Women had won the right to vote, and they became a political force before which the stoutest politician quailed. They had tried to invade the barber shop, but the customers thought they played too rough. In the presidential campaign of 1920, women had their first chance to vote for a president of the United States. The Republican candidate, Warren G. Harding, was a very handsome man, and he was careful to say nothing that might offend anyone. Entertainers like Al Jolson helped liven the campaign, and Harding always posed like a regular fellow. He had the august backing of Charles Evans Hughes, and the beauteous stage star of former times, Lillian Russell, plumped for Harding in an appeal to the newly enfranchised women voters. His vice presidential running mate was Cal Dewey, made famous by the Boston police strike, and it looked to them as though the election was in the bag. They were right. The Democratic Party's candidate, Governor James M. Cox of Ohio, and his running mate, one of the New York Roosevelts, never had a chance. The Republicans moved in on Washington with great hopes. Harding stood for a return to normalcy, a great contrast to Wilson's idealism, as they drove off to the ceremony on Capitol Hill. administration that was willing to take things as they came. Andrew Mellon, the Treasury. Under his regime, the government debt was rapidly reduced, and the foundation for a new period of prosperity was laid. In that atmosphere, a great and nationwide upswing in productive work and in industrial techniques began. Everyone liked Harding, who was a friendly man, and when Gompers called to ask for the release of Eugene Debs, an imprisoned socialist leader, Harding agreed to the pardon, and Debs, who had been jailed for obstructing the conduct of the war, was freed. After all, the war was over, and the problem was to get back to normal living. National defense cost a lot of money, and armaments were thought by some people to be one of the causes of war. So Harding called for a conference for the limitation of naval armaments. In that era of good feeling, there seemed little likelihood that there would ever be another war, and the diplomats converged on Washington in high spirits. Secretary of State Hughes presided over the conference, at which the wartime allies agreed to reduce the number and limit the size of their warships. And at the time, when no threat of war existed, the agreements made appeared to be sensible and logical, even if they put the Japanese in effective control of the Western Pacific. It seemed like a good idea at the time.
But battleship decks could still be cleared for action, preferably one of the new dances like the Black Bottom. These were pretty fancy goings-on, but after all, people were letting their hair down. The women were fascinated by Peggy Hopkins Joyce, who had a habit of getting married and divorced and married again and again. When the Immigration authorities kept a visiting English actress, the Countess of Cathcart, on Ellis Island for alleged moral turpitude, it sounded as though the Countess was up to something special, although the charges were later dismissed. The jazz age began to get interesting. The girls stopped wearing corsets and began to dance in a friendly way. The young generation discovered that sex and autos went well together, and the pulp magazines confirmed the discovery.
Hollywood knew all about that angle. Why, someone cooked up an audience reaction meter to test the voltage given off by Rudolph Valentino clinching with Vilma Banky. The love meter almost booze. Things got so hot in the movies that the reputable producers signed up Will Hayes at $100 grand a year to clean up the picture business and yet keep the busybodies off the industry's neck. Anxious reformers thought the movies were overselling girls. Maybe they were. They had some beauties. Gloria Swanson was one lovely no one could ever forget. And when she turned up on an incoming liner with a new husband, this time a French marquis, well, no one bothered about the rest of the passengers. John Barrymore and Dolores Costello were members of the royalty of stage and screen. And even more than that, great fits. But the star who really laid him in the aisles was Rudolph Valentino, the great lover. There are fans who will never forget him, and Broadway will never forget his funeral. They had to call out all the cops, and even then, it was almost a riot. Paul Negri was there, and the honorary pallbearers included all the brass from Hollywood. Dead or alive, Valentino had made history in the growth of American movies. fact, everything that happened to a star was important. The fans went gaga when the romance of Rod LaRoque and Vilma Banky ended just like in the pictures. As a comedian, Charlie Chaplin was already the old master. Douglas Fairbanks was the kid's hero. But as a screen couple, none could surpass Garbo and Gilbert. It wasn't all sex. There was Will Rogers, who had a whole fun quality no one has ever been able to match. Will came up the hard way, through the Vaudeville circuit.
Well, all I know is what I read in the paper.
But it was Al Jolson who had first cracked things wide open for the new sound movies when he starred in The Jazz Singer.